Hey Pete, how do I read the surf forecast? I'm a beginner.
Great question. So I would love to talk about that. A lot of people have been asking me that. So I use a website called Surf Captain. I feel like it's the most user-friendly platform for beginner surfers because they make it really obvious about the wind conditions, which wind is good wind. So green means ideal wind conditions, blue means pretty good wind conditions, red means bad wind conditions. And when you're a beginner surfer, for the first month or 2 months that you're learning to surf, basically you want to be surfing waves in the 1 to 3 foot zone. So waves that are 1 meter or less. Anything that's 4 feet or bigger on the surf forecast is probably going to be way too big for you. You're going to have a semi-traumatic experience because it's hard just to get out there when the waves are over chest high if you're on a big beginner board and you're unable to duck dive, which is where you sink the board underneath the waves. So when you're a beginner, you're looking for waves in the 1 to 3 foot range, and I like this website just because green means good. That means the wind is blowing offshore towards the waves, which kind of grooms the waves and makes the waves break really smooth with a beautiful curling shape. Blue usually means there's like little to no wind, or the wind might be onshore, which is where it's blowing from the sea to the shore, which can be good for beginners if that wind is light. It'll cause the waves to kind of crumble. So instead of there being like steep, curling, cylindrical waves, or like really choppy waves, there'll just be like crumbly, mushy waves, which is ideal if you're learning to surf because the first few times you'll just be on the white water, so it doesn't really matter if it's like windy or not if you're on the white water. But once you start catching the curling green waves, you want those mushy, like not so steep waves that are a little more forgiving. That's definitely what you're looking for. So if it's like a blue wind day with like a light onshore wind for New York, that's a south wind, that's what you want, because you could practice catching the green waves and it's going to be more of like a slopey drop in instead of like a real steep drop in. So for beginners in particular, that might be the best. That green wind where it's blowing offshore causes the waves to barrel. That's where you see tubes. So when it's only 1 to 3 foot, they're not really like tubing. You're not going to get any sick barrels out there. But it might be harder to drop into the wave if you're just learning, because when the wave is real like steep and cylindrical like that, you're going to be dropping in at a more vertical angle, and you've got to be really quick with your pop-up, otherwise the nose of your board is going to nosedive and you might wipe out. So I always teach beginners, you got to pop up quick and you got to lean on your back foot to kind of level off your big board, because usually you're learning on a 9 or 8 foot board. So you got to lean back so that the board doesn't nosedive. So you got to pop up quick, lean back, and that might be kind of challenging if it's just like your second or third time surfing ever. But if it's more of an onshore wind or like no wind at all, it kind of breaks more slopey. It's less like steep. You might, drop in like this more, kind of like, a green trail on the mountain as opposed to a black diamond. So 1 to 2 foot waves with a light onshore wind, light south wind for New York beaches is great. Those green days can be good too, as long as it's not too big. I'm also going to talk about the seconds, the swell period. What does that mean? People always ask me, what are those seconds? So the seconds is basically how far the swell traveled before arriving at your local surf spot. So When the period is really low, that means these waves are from a local storm. So these waves were just formed recently. So if the seconds are only like 3 or 4 seconds, that's a local wind swell, we call it. So the waves, when they come, are going to be really close together. It usually comes with some wind. It might be kind of choppy conditions. And there's less sets. It's more like wave after wave after wave, because the swell didn't have time to organize. The opposite of that is a ground swell. So when it's 8 seconds or more, that's a swell that was formed farther away, traveled through the ocean for a long distance, and in that time that it was traveling, the bigger waves group together, and you get well-formed sets of 3 or 4 or 5 waves in a row. And then there will be a gap, a lull we call it, in between the sets, and then another set would come. And it can be easier to get out there, at least when it's like that, because you can wait for the set to pass and then paddle out, and you have a nice little lull. Usually those swells have more energy, so the higher that number is, the more energy the swell has. So if it's a 16-second period, those are going to be like pretty intense, strong breaking waves. This swell was a big swell that traveled a long distance. So for the East Coast, maybe that swell formed off of Cabo Verde, off of Africa, and traveled all the way through the tropics, up the East Coast, and now it's hitting New York. And it's going to come with a lot of energy. And the set might be with, 8 to 10 waves in a set, but then there will be a long break in between. So the longer that swell period, the longer a gap there is in between sets. But when those sets come, they're going to be full on. It's going to be, up to 8, 10 waves, back to back to back, and they're going to be pretty strong waves. So for a beginner, if you see something that's like 16 seconds, even if it's like 1 foot at 16 seconds, you should know these are going to be pretty strong waves, and you might be in over your head. That's more for the pros. Surfline is another good app, but Surfline seems to only say it's good when it's good for pros. So I would check the other apps, like Surf Captain is kind of the go-to for beginners, I would say. Yeah, because pro surfers want different conditions than, someone who's just does it casually or is just learning, Usually you just want 1 to 3 foot waves. If you're like a seasoned surfer, you've been doing it for 10 years and you're looking for barrels, when Surfline says 4 to 6 foot and good, that's for you. But for the average beginner, you want to just say, 1 to 3 foot, maybe 1.5 feet at 7 seconds would be great for you to learn on. Today, you can see behind me, we have some little 1 to 2 foot waves. I just finished up some classes here at Surfs Up NY. And today's forecast on Surf Captain is 1.8 feet at 8 seconds. So this is a ground swell. It traveled up from the tropics. It's at a southeast angle, so it's hitting this direction, causing like some nice lefts to form off of the jetties here in Rockaway. And we had some really great rides this morning. Now it's a little windy. There's a southeast wind. That also typically happens usually around 2 or 3 o'clock each day. The wind gets stronger in the summer because of the onshore sea breeze caused by the heat. There's a lot of little things. But today would be a good day for a beginner to practice because the waves aren't too intimidating and, they're only like waist-high waves. Or maybe some up to even stomach high. But 1.8 feet at 8 seconds is great for a beginner. And my advice to you, if you're learning to surf and you really want to get good at this, is don't just wait for the green good days. You should go out in all conditions. For your first month surfing, try to avoid anything 4 foot plus. It might be too much for you. It'll just be hard to get out there. But yeah, anything 1 to 3 foot, red, blue, or green, you should get out and you can practice catching the white water. When it's red, you should look, okay, this is an onshore wind, but like how strong is the wind actually? I would say, you know, if it's 10 miles per hour or less, you can still surf and catch some good rides. If it's like 15 miles per hour plus, you know, gusting winds up to 20, 25 miles per hour, that's, you know, victory at sea, really stormy conditions. You want no part of that. It could be dangerous. There could be rip currents. Yeah, but if it's 10 miles per hour or less, you can still get out there and catch some good waves and have a good time. And if you're just looking to surf, you know, maybe once a week and you can only take 1 day off, then I would wait for those green or blue days. You know, you'll have a pleasant experience. But if you're really looking to like learn how to surf this summer and you want to go multiple times per week, don't worry too much about the forecast. Just check the height, that it's not like 6 feet, you know, because that's going to be way too much. Just go when it's 1 to 3 feet, and the wind doesn't matter too much.